The head coaching direction of Coach Dan Reeves. Dan was my head coach. Yeah. Well, thank you. Great man, an unbelievable leader. And he had his finger on the pulse of our team. He understood when we'd reached a point where we weren't progressing the way he expected us to, and he'd call us all together as a team, and it was usually after a loss, but sometimes it was after a win. And it was always right before he sent us off to run a bunch of sprints, because that was his answer to most problems. He'd call us all together as a team about once a year, and he'd say, "Now, man," he's from Georgia. He had this crazy drawl. "Man, you're either getting better or you're getting worse. You can't stay the same." Now, Dan said a lot of things I'm still trying to figure out. But I understand that. Change is inevitable. It's going to happen. And whether it's the technology pyramid peak, or whether it's the unmanned trucks, or there's new things coming down the road, and you have to be available to change. Today we're going to talk about 6 keys to success that allow you to control change, that allow you to excel through change. We're going to talk about teamwork, with leadership being the ultimate expression of teamwork. Courage, the courage to try new things and the courage to be decisive. Dedication, which is hard work, constant learning, refusing to quit. Desire, that's the dream, the passion, the mission. Honesty and forgiveness with yourself and self-evaluation and with others. And finally, goal setting, the little steps that get you to that dream, that passion, that mission. My first speaking engagement was interesting. The Broncos had made the playoffs for the first time in 5 years, my rookie year, 1983. Now, I grew up in Minnesota. Are there any Viking fans in here? There are. There's a few of you. I grew up in Minnesota, and when the Vikings made the playoffs, people panicked. They did. They get this thing in their throat and this thing in their stomach, and they think, "Oh God, here we go again." Because they lost the Super Bowl so many times. And I thought that's how it was going to be when I got here to Denver, because they'd lost the Super Bowl. But people were so excited when we made the playoffs. They were painting their houses orange. There's a whole generation of children named John Elway Wilson and John Elway Smith. And the Museum of Natural History decided to take advantage of some of this craziness about the Broncos and hold a pep rally. So they called the Broncos. And the Broncos assigned myself and our old running back at the time, a guy named Sammy Winder, to go down and speak at this thing. And I'd never done anything like that before. But I thought about it. I'd done a lot of new things that year. Got married that year. Got my first real job that year, if you count football as a job. Bought my first new car that year, a Trans Am with T-tops. Yeah. I thought I was Smokey and the Bandit. So I said, all right, I'll do this thing. How many of you have been to the Museum of Natural History, or a museum? Most of you, right? Well, if you haven't, you've seen that movie, Night at the Museum, right? You know what these things are like. And the one in Denver is a lot like the one in the movie, except there's all these one-way streets down there. So I got there a little late. They were going the wrong way. I walked in, the lady in charge of the pep rally, and Sammy had already given up on me. And I hurried up and caught up with Sammy and asked him what was going to happen. And Sammy explained it to me like this. He said, "Karl, first I'll get up, I'll talk about the offense. Then it'll be your turn. You'll get up, you'll talk about the defense. And then this lady here, she's going to hand us a Seahawk. We're playing the Seattle Seahawks. She's going to hand us a Seahawk, and we're supposed to tear it up." I figured we could do that. It wasn't a very big crowd. It was maybe 40 people. But they were all wearing their Bronco stuff, right? They had their Bronco jerseys on, their Bronco hats, their foam fingers, their pom-poms. I mean, if you were going to give a first speech, it was a great group to give it to. And Sammy got up and did a wonderful job. Talked about how Elway was going to throw the ball and how he was going to run it and how many points they were going to score. And the fans are getting excited. And I'm sitting back here sweating. Like, uh-oh, it's my turn next. But I gave it a shot. I got up and I talked about how Louis Wright and Steve Foley were going to intercept the ball, and Randy Gradishar and Tom Jackson tackled their running backs, and myself and Rulon Jones sacked the quarterbacks, and the fans are getting more excited. I'm thinking, hey, I can do this. So then it's time for the Seahawk. And the lady takes this bird, it's a taxidermied bird, and hands it to Sammy. And Sammy holds it up over his head and says, Karl, you're the defensive player. You tear it up and give me this thing. Now, if you've been to the museum, and all of you have, you've seen the diorama, right? It's a glass enclosure, and inside of there's a featured animal and the whole environment that animal lives in, the grass, the ants, the grass. I mean, very lifelike, just like the movie. Well, this bird wasn't anything like that. This bird looked like it had come out of a shoebox. Its wings were pinned to its side. It had feathers sticking out, felt kind of crunchy in my hands. I figured they don't need this thing. So I held it up to this side of the room and said, this is what we're going to do to the Seahawks. Told you I'm from Minnesota, right? Right, in Minnesota, if someone says tear it up, they mean tear it up. Sammy's from Mississippi. I found out later that in Mississippi Ebonics, tear it up can mean like tear up the town, tear up the dance floor, wrestle around. I ripped this bird in half. Feathers are flying. I throw the half with no head attached to the ground. I tore the head off the other half. I threw it out in the crowd. The crowd's going crazy. I'm thinking, I love public speaking. This is for me. And then I saw the lady in charge of the thing. She had her head in her hands. She couldn't believe what I'd just done. You see, the Seahawk was actually an osprey. Part of an ongoing study of the osprey species where they collected one every year. The crunchy osprey that was spread out on the ground in front of me had been collected in 1910. I got hate mail from the Audubon Society. My parents lived in Washington, D.C. at the time. They read about it in USA Today. That was an interesting phone call from my mother. As I'm leaving the scene of the crime, they're announcing, whoever caught the head of the Seahawk, please bring it back. You'll get free passes to the IMAX theater. It's the courage to try new things, even though they might go wrong. That's why it's so hard to try new things. That's why it's so easy to say, no, that's not how we do it here. Or yeah, that's a good idea, but that's not how we do it here. You've got to have the courage to try new things to move forward. If you truly want to be the best dot in the country, it's only going to happen if the leadership embraces the courage to try new things. You're either getting better or you're getting worse. You can't stay the same, right? Have the courage to try new things, because a lot of times it doesn't go wrong. The first time I ever played linebacker in my life was my third year in the NFL. The Broncos coaches came to me that offseason and said, Karl, you're doing a great job as a third down pass rusher and a special teams player, but we think you can help the team more if you switch to linebacker. Never done it. My Pop Warner coach way back when I was 10 years old said, Mecklenburg, you're a big kid. You're a lineman. And I was a lineman in high school, lineman in college. The Broncos drafted me as a lineman. 77, that's a lineman's number. It's not a linebacker's number. But I said, all right, I'll give it a shot. I believed in myself, and I believed in my coaches, and I gave it a shot. I went to training camp as a linebacker, practice as a linebacker, meetings as a linebacker. When game time came, I was still a third down pass rusher and a special teams player until the 10th game of that year. The 10th game of that year, our starter, a guy named Rick Dennison, who's the offensive coordinator for the Broncos now, he had gotten hurt that week in practice, and I was going to start, and the Raiders were coming to town. Biggest game of the, thanks for not cheering. biggest game of the year. It always was for us. Whoever won that game was going to the playoffs, and whoever lost that game wasn't. Never stepped on a field as a linebacker, and I got out there and I trained. I knew what to do. Things went fast at first, but I started making plays. I actually had that big hit you saw in the highlight video when I hit Marcus Allen and knocked him out. The Fox television program, the Fox Sports List, listed that as one of the top 10 hits in NFL history. I didn't even know what I was doing yet, but I was a linebacker. There was no question about that. Have the courage to try new things. Each and every one of us and the people that work for us have more talent, more possibilities than they can achieve in a lifetime. But along with that, they've got free will, and you've got free will. And that means you have to have the courage to try new things and to encourage the people that work under you to have the courage to try new things. You're either getting better or you're getting worse. Have the courage to try new things. There's another courage I like to talk about, and that's the courage to be decisive. I run a 4.9 40. For those of you who follow the NFL Combine, that's that thing they hold before the draft where they bring the college seniors in and run them through a bunch of tests in Indianapolis, see how high they can jump and how fast they can run. Well, a 4.9 40 is what the 300-pounders are doing now, right? I mean, that's not fast enough to play in the NFL. That's why I was a college walk-on. I wasn't a pro walk-on. I was the 310th pick of the draft. It'd be better for you to be a free agent. That's 20 guys away from Mr. Irrelevant. That's the last guy picked in the draft. So I didn't even get that. but it's because I was too slow. But I found out early on in my career that if I took the first step in the right direction before anybody else did, all the angles would change in my favor. Let me say that again, because that's not just on the football field. That's in relationships. That's definitely in business. That's in community too. If you take the first step in the right direction before anybody else does, all the angles change in your favor. All of a sudden the fullback can't keep you from getting to the line of scrimmage, the tight end can't pin you, and the guard can't cut you off. Everything changes. The question is, how do you do that? How can you be decisive? How can you have that courage? Well, it's preparation. It's going into every day, having already thought about what's going to happen that day, and anticipating what's going to happen next. It's realizing that you have control, and you can make decisions that will affect your life and the life of those around you. As leaders, that's huge. I mean, to me, a leader, his job, her job, is to allow those that work for them to be successful. To me, success is overcoming obstacles on the way to your dreams. You got a huge role as a leader. Because what you think about that morning before you arrive to work is going to impact those people underneath you and allow them to be successful or not. And it all comes down to what's important to you. What's your desire? What's your passion? What's your mission? For me, it was always, I want to be the greatest football player that ever played the game. That's what I thought about. Is there anybody here from Greeley, Colorado? Wow, I hate Greeley. I got to say it. I spent over a year of my life in Greeley in training camp, if you add up all the weeks. And it was the most difficult year of my life. You go to Greeley and there's 110 guys invited to Greeley. At the end of 5 weeks, 50 are on the team. More than half get sent home, and every single one of them is gifted enough to play in the NFL. They all are. They've got scouts whose only job it is to go out and go to college and find guys who can play football. And what they do is they'll come into the college and they'll talk to the coaches and say, hey, you got anybody you think would be a good match for us? They look at film. They do interviews. They run you through those tests. How high can you jump? How much weight can you lift? How fast can you run? All that stuff. And then if they think maybe you can help the team, then they'll talk to you. And they'll talk to the people that are important to you. I was the 310th pick of the draft. The Broncos sent 2 different scouts to scout me. One of them even interviewed my girlfriend. That's how hard they look at you. They know you can help the team. The question is, do you know? And what's your level of desire, passion, mission? I wasn't athletically as good as many of the players that came and went during my career. But I knew where I was going. I was going to be the best football player I could possibly be. And when I got up in the morning, I thought about those things. I get up in the morning, I'd do a little Bible study, think about what was important to me. And then go to work and be prepared and anticipate what was going to happen that day. And because of that, I could react. I could be decisive. because I knew where I was going. Now, I have dyslexia myself. You saw in the highlight video, I played on the left side, the right. I didn't know. I didn't care. It didn't matter. I had no idea. I think that's what it's like if you haven't identified what your desire, what your passion, what your mission is. I think that's what it's like for the people who work under you if they don't know what your desire, your passion, your mission is for your team. It's a huge piece. I've already heard it repeatedly here. CDOT's about saving lives and making people's lives better. CDOT made my life better one day. A couple of years ago, I had a speech in Grand Junction. I was driving to Grand Junction, stopped in, I think it's West Vale at the city market there. Was going to go in and get a sandwich and a drink and head down the hill, and got back to the car and tried to turn my key, and it was so dead the needle on the gauges didn't even move. I mean, it was absolutely dead, like someone had unhooked my battery. So I got out, I had a little charger thing in the back and had the hood open, was trying to hook that up, and somebody in a CDOT truck, pickup truck, pulled up and said, "Hey, you having trouble?" He didn't know who I was. I said, "Yeah, I called AAA. They're going to be coming." You know what? He said, "You know what? I got a big charger in the back here. We'll get your thing started." He hooked me up. Boom, we started. I got down to Grand Junction and did my speech. Now, it was a little thing, but it was an important thing to me. I had a speech in an hour after I got there. If I was monkeying around waiting for, has anybody waited for AAA? That's a 2.5 hour thing. Thank you, whoever that was. Thank you, whoever's manager that was. Thank you for the culture that allows your employees to say, "You know what? I'm here to make people's lives better. Yeah, I wanted to go in and go to the bathroom or buy a sandwich or whatever he was there to do, but there was somebody here who I could make his life better, and he made a difference to me."